On 5 News tonight, getting down to the business of Brexit. Nigel Farage's last laugh and no confidence in Corbyn from his own MPs. David Cameron heads to Brussels to start talking about getting Britain out of the EU.
Now I know that virtually none of you have ever done a proper job in your lives.
Nigel Farage is also there. He's jeered at during an emergency meeting of the European Parliament.
Isn't it finally time to quit, Mr. Corbyn? How can you...
And 80% of Jeremy Corbyn's own MPs lose faith in him as Labour leader. So, what happens next? Also tonight, we're talking about that England performance. The squad heads home in shame after what's being called their worst defeat ever. So, could they learn a thing or two from this woman? Laura Trott, the double gold Olympian, tells us about winning and handling pressure. Good evening, welcome to 5 News Tonight. I'm Matt Barbett. 4 days after that momentous vote to leave the EU, and the Prime Minister is in Brussels. He's having what might be a rather uncomfortable dinner with other European leaders who are unhappy with the result by and large and also the timetable to go. Mr Cameron is not invited to their talks tomorrow on Britain's exit. Meanwhile, UKIP's leader Nigel Farage took a much more confrontational approach at the European Parliament, with his speech today getting applause and cheers, but also jeers and booing. From Brussels, our political editor Andy Bell has more.
He didn't like Brussels summits at the best of times, and this is not the best of times. But he does need some help for what comes next.
While we're leaving the European Union, we mustn't be turning our backs on Europe. These countries are our neighbours, our friends, our allies, our partners, and I very much hope we'll seek the closest possible relationship in terms of trade and cooperation and security.
Those partners, like the President of the European Commission, do seem ready to give Britain some more time before starting the formal process. But they do want to get on with it.
Europe is ready to start the divorce process even today, without any enthusiasm, as you can imagine. This is not the scenario we were dreaming about.
And the most powerful politician in Europe was pretty clear this morning too. Chancellor Merkel of Germany said any deal giving the UK access to the single market would have to include free movement of people.
For more than 40 years in places like this, the UK flag has flown alongside those of the European Union. We are at the start of a long process, but presumably, at the end of it, that flag will be hauled down.
One man who's dreamed of that moment was enjoying himself in the European Parliament today.
You know, when I came here 17 years ago and I said that I wanted to lead a campaign to get Britain to leave the European Union, you all laughed at me. Well, I have to say, you're not laughing now, are you? Now I know that virtually none of you have ever done a proper job in your lives.
He was booed, and the President of the Commission mocked him.
I'm really surprised that you are here. You were fighting for the exit. The British people voted in favour of the exit. Why are you here?
But he didn't mind. And one MEP from Scotland made a heartfelt plea.
But please remember this. Scotland did not let you down. Please, I beg you, chers collègues, do not let Scotland down now.
Earlier, the British EU Commissioner in charge of financial services was given a warm send-off. He resigned after the referendum result. Almost certainly this is the last time he'll be in this photo. He has started this process, but whoever follows him will finish it.
Just a short time ago, Andy caught up with Nigel Farage and asked him why he was so confrontational in the European Parliament today.
What I was trying to say to them was, look, Britain has voted to leave the European Union. Let's now have a sensible, grown-up conversation about having a trade deal. And we should do it because it's in your interests even more than it's in ours.
A lot of people are saying, indeed Jean-Claude Juncker was saying, why are you still here? I mean, you've got Britain to leave the European Union, isn't it? Are you now going to quit the European Parliament in the next few weeks and just say, right, that's it, and move on? What was your plan with the European Parliament? Because there's no need for you to be here anymore.
No, there is, because the European Parliament will vote on the negotiations on Brexit. So I will engage here purely on the terms of our leaving.
What do you think about the way this is going so far, that Article 50 has not been triggered? Would you like Article 50 to have been triggered by now?
I feel there's too much drift. I feel there's a bit of backsliding going on. There are people who were involved with the Leave campaign almost beginning to concede that maybe we need to have the free movement of people, and that is not what people voted for. I rarely find myself agreeing with Jean-Claude Juncker, the President of the European Commission, but as he said, we can't wait months for Article 50. Let's end the uncertainty and get on with it, and I'm now very much of that view.
But doesn't it make sense that you have the new UK Prime Minister has to lead that negotiation? Therefore, we can only, at the earliest, trigger Article 50 in September.
Which leads to months, which literally leads to months of uncertainty. I don't want to see any backsliding in policy, and I think a negotiating team needs to get put together in the next few weeks, and let's get started.
Do you think Boris Johnson is backsliding on commitments on things like free movement, for instance?
Let me see, I'm confused. You know, what he wrote one day and said the next appear to be different. You know, I mean, the Tory leadership list will emerge on Thursday. I'm assuming Boris will be part of it. I want to see Boris absolutely keeping faith with the 17.5 million people that voted for Brexit, and they want control of our borders back.
Who would you be happiest with? It's going to be a Conservative, it's going to be Prime Minister. Who would you most like to see leading that?
I don't care. As long as there's
Would Boris
somebody.
be acceptable?
Well, if he's committed.
Theresa May?
Well, difficult for Theresa May because she was a Remainer. You know, I need to see a Prime Minister that is absolutely committed to fulfilling the will of 17.5 million people. That's all that matters.
Nigel Farage there, speaking to our political editor Andy Bell in Brussels just a bit earlier on. Well, back here, fallout is continuing for the Labour Party. Just a bit earlier on, MPs overwhelmingly gave Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn a vote of no confidence. That's after a string of resignations from his shadow cabinet. Mr Corbyn, though, still insists he's going nowhere. Catherine Jones is in Westminster for us this evening. Cathy, a real crisis seeming to engulf the Labour Party now.
Yes, those tremors still being felt from that referendum result, intensifying even today in the Labour Party. 3/4 of Labour MPs sending an astonishing message to Jeremy Corbyn, saying they have no confidence in him as leader. And yet, despite that vote, just a few minutes later, the Labour leader said he is going to tough it out still.
Isn't it finally time to quit, Mr Corbyn? How can you survive a vote of no confidence, Mr Corbyn?
He started the day as Labour leader.
When will he resign?
And he'll finish it as Labour leader, despite a sustained effort by members of his own parliamentary party to oust him.
The entire world has changed, the country has changed following the EU referendum. We now know that Jeremy and his team didn't do what they ought to be doing in that, particularly with regard to the Labour vote. The Labour vote didn't know what it was meant to be doing. I mean, the consequences for the country have been catastrophic as a result of that. I said to Jeremy today, please, for the sake of our party, leave now. You cannot steer a ship without a crew.
172 Labour MPs voted that they have no confidence in Jeremy Corbyn. Just 40 colleagues supported him. And here's Mr Corbyn's statement in response. I was democratically elected leader of our party for a new kind of politics by 60% of Labour members and supporters, and I will not betray them by resigning. In an earlier show of defiance, Mr Corbyn invited cameras to film the first meeting of his new shadow cabinet.
We've had a very frank, very interesting and I think very productive shadow cabinet meeting. This country faces a crisis in the economy.
2/3 of these shadow ministers have only just taken up their roles, thrust into the limelight after mass resignations hollowed out Labour's top team.
172 of my colleagues have got no confidence in him. He'll hear what they have to say, but he might want to hear what the rest of the party has to say, and he's got the right to do that as a chosen leader.
Don't let those people who wish us ill divide us.
Last night, Jeremy Corbyn addressed a rally of thousands who gathered outside Parliament to support him. Labour's MPs may have made a determined effort to get rid of their leader, but today's vote cannot force him to go. Catherine Jones, 5 News.
At Westminster now is Labour MP Barry Gardner, who was appointed Shadow Energy and Climate Change Secretary yesterday. And with me here in the studio is Scarlett Maguire, who's a former Labour Party Communications Chief. Mr. Gardner, your colleagues voted overwhelmingly for no confidence in Jeremy Corbyn. 80% of them did that. So how on earth can he stay in the main job?
Well, there is a process within the Labour Party for getting rid of a leader. That is not to have a vote of no confidence. It's for somebody to stand as a candidate in a leadership election and to secure 50 votes of the MPs who wish to nominate them.
Which I'm sure many of them are planning to do now. But in the meantime, Barry, though, in the meantime, when the Tories seemingly are in disarray and Labour usually would be reaping the benefits of that, you're in even more disarray.
And is this not the point? That this was not the time for members of the Parliamentary Labour Party to start an internecine warfare when the pound is at a 35-year low, when 12% has been knocked off annuities for people's pensions, when investors are saying, like Siemens did today, that they are going to put their investment in future plant in Hull on hold, when the Prime Minister himself has had to resign because he called a referendum and then lost it, but called it simply for party political purposes to quell his own backbenchers. Is that not precisely the time when the Labour Party needs to be on the front foot at the dispatch box, holding this government to account and fighting for ordinary people's jobs and livelihoods?
So
I think it's self-indulgent for us to have had this vote of no confidence today, and I think the people of this country will find it incredible that we cared more about who was going to be our leader in the future than we cared about fighting on their behalf in the House of Commons at that critical moment. The country is in crisis, the government is in crisis as they seek to elect a new leader, and now, because of this vote of no confidence, the Labour Party has not been able to respond in the way that I believe it should have done.
Is he the right man then to lead the Labour Party? Potentially, we hear there could be another general election before the year is out. Is he the right man to do that, and ultimately to become Prime Minister too, perhaps?
Well, he is the party's choice to do that.
So is he the right man for those jobs?
If people feel that they don't want him to do that any longer, then what they should have done is they should have observed the due process in the party, and somebody should have stood against him and secured the necessary nominations. Is he the right man to lead the party into a general election, Mr. Gardner? Sorry, I didn't catch that. Is he the right man to lead the party into a general election? He's the party's choice to do that. Let me be absolutely clear.
Is he your choice? Is he your choice? Yes or no?
I did not nominate Jeremy Corbyn in the leadership election 9 months ago. I did not vote for him as my first choice in that election.
But you're happy to work for him now.
But the key point here is that it's not the preserve of any MP or any group of MPs. It's the party as a whole that elects their leader. And I have to respect that choice, and I have to do my job in government, in the shadow cabinet, to hold this government to account.
Scarlett Maguire,
that's what the party expects of me, and I believe it's what the public expects of me.
Thank you for the moment. Scarlett Maguire, can Jeremy Corbyn survive this?
Of course he can survive it.
Should he survive it, though?
Well, the question is that most leaders would go if 81% of their parliamentary party said, I can no longer work with you. And I understand everything that Barry Gardner said, but it really is a question of leadership.
The thing is, as Jeremy Corbyn and his supporters say, John McDonnell too, he has a huge mandate from members, not the parliamentary members, but members of the Labour Party that he got only last year.
Absolutely. And why this has happened because the Parliamentary Labour Party were absolutely shocked to lose the EU referendum on which we all know Jeremy was lukewarm. And I think had we won it, they knew, and we've heard from all the campaigns around, that Jeremy actually, his office was accused of sabotaging the Labour campaign against it. So while a lot of the Labour MPs were out trying to win the Remain, Jeremy didn't care. Then we could easily have a general election before Christmas, and all the research shows that 1 in 4 people who voted Labour in 2015, not a great result, won't vote again.
Yeah, that's a good point, Barry Gardner. By sticking by this man who, yes, has a a big mandate from members of the Labour Party, but doesn't exactly float the boat of the undecided. You could be doing yourself out of your own job.
Look, my job in this is neither here nor there. The point is this: the opposition has a duty to hold this government to account. At the time when this government most needed to be held to account was in the deepest crisis, we have been less able to do that because members of the Parliamentary Labour Party...
The vast majority. So what's your message? What's your message to the vast majority of the Parliamentary Labour Party then? What are you saying to your colleagues in Parliament?
Look, it's very simple. Those people in the PLP who are my colleagues, and many of them I've worked with for the past 20 years and more, those who think that we should have a new leader should then put up a candidate against Jeremy. Once that candidate is in place with 50 nominations, there will then be a contest. That's democracy. I'm all in favour of that. We should then have a democratic vote. But I want to take up on what Scarlett had said.
I'm sorry to say we're out of time, but I do appreciate you giving us yours, Barry Gardner and Scarlett Maguire. Thank you very much indeed as well. Still to come on the programme. Yeah, that's victory, Iceland style. That commentator does it again. And... But Wimbledon's here, and can Scot Andy Murray give England something to cheer about? All that and more after the break. Welcome back to 5 News Tonight. The former England manager, Roy Hodgson, faced the media today saying he was feeling very fragile and that it hadn't been a good night. He resigned after England crashed out of the Euros in spectacular fashion last night, losing to Iceland, the lowest-ranked team left in the tournament, a result which maintained what Roy Hodgson called a wretched record. Let's go now to Peter Lane, who's in Nice. Peter, what did you make of what Roy Hodgson had to say today?
Well, Matt, he's been personal, he's been honest. I think that's all he can do right now. He's talked about feeling sad and sorry and said there's no quick answer for what went wrong. But the fans who travelled out here will be feeling shortchanged. And the players who woke up here in Nice this morning were still feeling the nightmare of last night. This is not the bus you want to be on. As the England squad left their hotel in Nice this morning, there was no mistaking the mood. And if a picture paints 1,000 words, Roy Hodgson's face said so much. Just round the corner, England fans Seb and Joe waited for their bus to the airport, summing up the sentiments of so many.
Bitterly disappointed. As a fan, I've just spent so much money on this tournament.
It's not good enough, you know, and the money invested in the FA and the money invested in Roy Hodgson and the money these players earn, when you see the return, it just doesn't add up.
It added up to begin with when England went ahead. But underdogs Iceland swiftly pulled it level, leaving Rooney and co detached, desperate and disorganised. Deal done by a second Iceland goal. At the final whistle, Iceland ecstatic. Their commentator off the scale. England broken. Their manager out of a job.
I'm really disappointed. I didn't see the defeat coming. As far as I'm concerned now, I'm an ex-England manager and I can only wish the new England manager the best of luck, and I think, as I said in my statement, I'm leaving behind a good group of players to work with.
In Nice today, the only ones enjoying the ride are Iceland's supporters. You'll never forget what happened here.
Never. Once in a lifetime opportunity here, and we took it. Yeah.
You delivered.
Yeah, we delivered, that's true. And it's probably the biggest sports moment in the history of Iceland.
But it's a very different picture on the Promenade des Anglais, where England fans are packing up and walking away with memories of where it all went so wrong. Peter Lane, 5 News, Nice.
Yeah, where did it all go wrong? Let's ask Darren Lewis, sports writer at the Daily Mirror. Darren, we weren't going to talk about tactics and team selection, all that kind of thing last night, but let's talk more about the influence of the Premier League and its huge riches, set to get even bigger this season, on the national side. Is it a problem?
I don't think it is, Matt. I think that when you look at the Premier League, you see so many of the players who underperformed last night doing great things with their clubs. I think when you look at the Premier League, you see that the managers for whom these players are performing are much younger than Roy Hodgson. And I think he was the wrong man in charge of a group of players that could have achieved so much more.
Seeing those players get on the bus, heads hanging in shame, it feels like Groundhog Day. We've seen it so many times with England. It just ceases to... It doesn't have the impact it used to because it's the norm.
I think you're absolutely right. And you could probably replay all of this from about 2 years ago at the World Cup or 2 years before that at Euro 2000, where we were put out by Italy at the quarter-final stage. We didn't even get out of the group in Brazil. I think as far as Hodgson is concerned, his major tournament record, 3 wins from 11 games. And he gave a press conference today where he seemed not really to grasp the nation's anger at such a failure when he's paid so much and when we've got so much at our disposal.
Is there an English attitude problem that they think they're so much better than they really are? Certainly Scottish fans seem to recognise that in England.
Well, indeed, it's a really good question because when you look at Iceland, they played like a team. When you look at Wales, who are into the quarterfinals, they play like a team.
But they're underdogs. Maybe they thrive on that. Maybe England can't handle being the favourites.
Well, they were favourites for the game against Northern Ireland that many people expected them to win, and they went out and they did the job. But I think as far as England are concerned, you're right. There is this sense of entitlement. There is this sense of maybe seeing the players as better than they are, as individuals, Matt, rather than a group of players set out with a specific task. Until we manage to crack that, I don't think we're going to get any success on the international stage.
Darren, time to rebuild again. Thank you very much indeed. Good to see you. So how do you take a team of individual talents and get them to perform and work together as one? Are there lessons to learn from other sports that English athletes have been a bit more successful at? Well, earlier I spoke to Team GB cyclist Laura Trott, who has won 2 Olympic golds at the London Games. She's currently at a training camp in Valencia preparing for the Rio Olympics. And I began by asking her earlier on why she wants to encourage more girls to get involved with sport.
64% of girls actually drop out of sport at puberty age, and for me that just seemed like such an incredible number because obviously sport for me has always been my life, and it has been a way for me to sort of get self-confidence. So it seemed like a shocking number for me, and one that I guess that I thought that I could help bring down, because having female kind of role models out there can only bring that number down, I think, personally, because it kind of shows girls that no, actually you can carry on, and that you should really believe in yourself and believe that you should never quit.
And of course, Britain, England's women are doing much better than the men in many sports at the moment. You're very much the golden girl on the cycling track. We know that women's England footballers, for example, have been successful, whereas the men, well, very disappointing last night, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I don't really follow football. It was made even harder, obviously, because I'm in Valencia at the minute, so I didn't actually watch it. We only flew in last night. But yeah, I mean, isn't it good that women are now kind of in the forefront of sport? I think that's a massive step forward.
We've seen in football, for example, how important at the moment working as a team is. And that's something that you've had to cope with as well when it comes to something like the team pursuit on the track. How do you prepare working with the other women to race at the Olympics?
We obviously spend day in, day out training together. The team pursuit is kind of my main goal. It's the one that's always been more predictable. The feeling of working in a team is what I strive for. Like that kind of buzz and that energy that the girls give me is a feeling that I absolutely love. And having those girls there, you've always got somebody to kind of support you and to lean on, I guess. And you have good and bad days, and that is being part of a team. And it's great that you have got those girls there to support you fully through the journey, I guess.
A lot of cyclists like yourself have just been selected to go to Rio, but other potential Olympians have been concerned about the situation with the Zika virus in Brazil. Rory McIlroy, for example. Have you got any concerns about it at all?
I mean, I guess for them, because the golfers spend a lot of time outside, like their sport is an outside sport, whereas ours is obviously an inside sport. So that's, I guess, a little bit different. We've got a doctor at British Cycling who I fully believe will support us and will give us all the best advice that he possibly can. And I just think if it was that dangerous, he wouldn't go himself, and he's still going. So we can only kind of take the precautions that they've given us, like to wear the sprays, to wear long sleeve clothing. But yeah, it hasn't really been a worry for me, to be totally honest.
Now, Laura, I think it's probably fair to say that Britain's most multi-talented cyclist ever is Bradley Wiggins. Sir Bradley, I should say. He's going to Rio for his 5th Olympic Games and has just said that he might even carry on after that. Now, Rio's going to be your 2nd. You've already got 2 gold medals, gold Olympic medals in the bag. How long do you think you could go on for? How many Olympics would you like to compete at?
I don't know. I'd like to say I could go on and on and on. Just go until I get chucked off, till they get sick of me, I guess. I don't want to get driven out of it or start not enjoying it, because it has been my life. And I always did say that I would carry on for as long as I carried on enjoying it.
Double Olympic gold medalist Laura Trott speaking to me a short time ago. And staying with British sporting heroes, one of them has been in action at Wimbledon today. Andy Murray has been playing in the first round against fellow Brit Liam Brodie. He's a player who's ranked 6th in the country and 235th in the world. Quite a way down. Minnie Stevenson went to join fans who'd gone to watch the all-British action.
Can there be anything more British than queuing and camping for the tennis? Even the Wimble dogs were marking their territory early doors. As the bubbles were flowing, the excitement was rising.
Try and contain yourselves, but can you just tell me how excited you are to be here?
So excited! Even queuing is cool. You know, I don't mind queuing for something like this.
Cool.
Yeah.
It's so British. How excited are you to be going to Wimbledon?
Very excited. 6 o'clock this morning, excited.
6 a.m? Yeah. That's like going on holiday excited.
Yeah, that's it.
It's very British, isn't it?
Yeah.
Quintessentially British.
And no wonder they're excited as Andy Murray for the first time took on another Brit at Wimbledon. Underdog Liam Brodie faced the former champion on centre court, and naturally Murray walked the first 2 sets. So for non-tennis anoraks, you may ask, who is Liam Brodie? Well, the 22-year-old is ranked 235th in the world, compared to Andy Murray's status as number 2. As a relative newcomer, Liam has never won a title, while Murray has won 37. One former Wimbledon champion told 5 News there can be no greater stage than centre court.
It's the most special centre court in the world, and you know, you want to play your best tennis. So there's always pressure. It doesn't matter if you're underdog or just enjoying and trying to enjoy it.
But the pressure of centre court and facing a champion proved too much. As Kim watched on, Murray beat Brodie in straight sets. Nevertheless, a rare battle between 2 Brits at Wimbledon. A victory for UK tennis all round. Minnie Stevenson, 5 News.
Summer's here, isn't it? Sian Welby is here as well with the weather next, and Danny has updates throughout the evening here on Channel 5. For now, thanks very much indeed for your company. See you again tomorrow at 6:30. Bye-bye.